Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. And of course, for this interview, I am saying it in that order because my very special guest on this episode of Kibbitzing with Kagan is the wonderful mayor of Gaithersburg, my friend, Jud Ashman. Jud, thank you so much for taking time of your busy day to come and join me today.
My pleasure, and you certainly know your audience. Thank you for putting Gaithersburg ahead in this case. It is duly noted.
Duly noted. So there is so much I want to cover with you today, and I know that you want to get out and knock on doors because it's an election year for you. So let's get started.
Let's do it.
You are very widely known and respected, but for those folks who may not know your background, why don't you start with where you were born, where you grew up, and how you got to Gaithersburg?
All right. Well, I was born and grew up in Miami, Florida. I lived there for the first 25 years of my life. I went to undergrad, University of Miami. I really enjoyed living there. I enjoy visiting it now, but I love living here. This has changed. This is now my hometown. I came up to DC originally for a job, and then the lady who would become my wife, Lee, and her two kids moved up to DC with me, and we realized we had to go somewhere where there was a better school system. And honestly, the decision between Montgomery County and Northern Virginia was made based on where our daughter could start kindergarten. She was 4, she was close to 5. And we felt she was ready for kindergarten. We found out she couldn't start kindergarten in Northern Virginia, so we ended up in Gaithersburg. It turned out to be sweet serendipity.
Yay, Jenna, she gets all the credit then.
Jenna gets all the credit. So in '97 we came to Gaithersburg, and the community embraced us. It welcomed us as this community tends to do, and we fell in love.
That's fantastic. Talk about how you first started getting involved in civic life in Gaithersburg before you ran for office.
Sure. Well, I started getting involved really, really locally at my kids' PTA at Brown Station Elementary School. First, I was a volunteer. I'd do stuff here and there, the spring fairs, the annual directory, those kind of things that I can help out in. Eventually, I ran for, I became PTA president and really got involved active in PTAs. I became the Quince Orchard Cluster coordinator a few years later and served a few years in that role. And I learned a lot about leadership and about how to get things done and build consensus during those years. I also met a lot of great people through PTA and developed sort of my first constituency, my first supporters locally when I eventually ran for office from that school community. That's where it all started for me. And it's also what got me interested in city affairs. Now, just going back to my growing up in Miami, I had no idea I'd be interested in running for office ever in my life. It just wasn't a thing that occurred to me. Mm-hmm. But as I was active in PTA and saw the impacts of my kids going to overcrowded schools, and word got to us that the city of Gaithersburg was entertaining a development project that was going to exacerbate this overcrowding dramatically. And particularly at the middle school, my son was going to Kingsview Middle School. There were like 13 or 14 portables at the time. And there was, while the city had reserved land for a new middle school, MCPS wasn't building it. And so I organized a bunch of people. I helped organize. I wasn't the only organizer. I helped organize a bunch of people to go to city council meetings and testify on Monday nights at the meetings against this project. And at the time, it was my first experience in local government. I was so impressed with how the council and the mayor listened to us, how they engaged us. We actually won the issue. They voted down the project at the time until, go ahead, Joe.
Was Ed Bohr mayor or was that Sydney?
That was Sydney.
That was Sydney. Okay.
I moved to the city in '97. Ed Bohr died that same year. I never got to meet Ed Bohr, unfortunately, because he left a tremendous legacy here. But it was Sydney Katz, who was wonderful, and And so I was really impressed with how they listened to us. I was also sort of surprised at how interested I was in the other issues they were talking about during their meetings. And so even after we won the day on that issue, I got involved. I just started going to meetings, started testifying on issues, volunteering for city committees, and just being involved. I got bit by the bug, and
I was just going to use that phrase. You got bitten by the bug.
I did, and I was just so inspired by the way our local government operated.
So talk then about the decision to run for the city council. How hard a decision? Did Lee support you in that? What was the toughest barrier?
That's like the key question, because
Right.
my wife Lee is very, very private, introverted, not a public person at all, which is why, whoever's watching this probably hasn't met my wife. So the question was whether she would support. I'm not going to run if she's not going to support me. I was good friends with Mike Sesma at the time. Mike was also a PTA guy. Our kids were on the same swim team. And so we had gotten to know each other, and he would come with me sometimes to testify at city council on issues. And so in 2005, which is about 4 or 5 years after I had gotten involved in local public affairs, Mike and Joni, his wife, and Lee and I went out to dinner. And the purpose of me inviting them to this dinner was to try to conscript Mike into running for city council. But Mike, for whatever reason, didn't just want to take the plunge alone. So at this dinner, Mike's like, well, I'll run if you run. And I'm thinking, all right, there's little chance I'm going to run. Lee's not going to want to do this. Well, a couple weeks after that dinner, Lee calls me at my office at work one day out of the blue and just says, okay, you want to run, go ahead and run. So I called Mike up. I'm like, guess what, Mike? We're running. We ran this meeting. What a great experience that was.
So I have to show you I'm drinking tea out of my Gaithersburg mug. So thank goodness the voters had the good sense to elect you and Mike. And then,
well, let me just say they had good sense. Maybe not as good as you think. I lost that first election by.
Did you lose your first one?
I lost my first one, 44 votes. I was really proud of the performance how we did, because we were running against 2 incumbents, and Mike won and I fell short by 44 votes. But during the process, there was nothing to discourage me about the process at all. I mean, we had no name recognition, no money endorsements, anything like that. It was just shoe leather. And I got that close. Mike got in. I knew I was going to want to run again. And in 2007, that's when I ran again. That's when I was elected for the first time to city council.
And when did you run with Kathy Drisgula?
That was it, 2007. Okay. Kathy was my teammate.
All right, so let's go a little faster because we have so much to cover.
Okay.
So fast forward, Sidney Katz gets elected to the county council, where he serves beautifully as my partner, District 3 council member. And so there's a vacancy for mayor. Talk us through what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I would have served happily on the city council with Sidney as my mayor till the end of time, because Sidney's great. And yep. I love the way our government operated. But when I looked around when it was inevitable that he was leaving, Sidney privately thought that I would be the best fit. And I feel like my personality is a really good fit. I feel like I'm a natural facilitator, and in the way the government in Gaithersburg is set up, the mayor role is really, facilitation's a big deal in it. Mm-hmm. And also Mike, who I had run with on a team, was friends with forever, and Kathy, who I'd run with on a team and was friends with for a long time, were both supporters of mine and encouraging me to step up, put my hat in the ring. It was an appointment at first, and so the city council members, my fellow council members, appointed me to that position.
So what do you like best? Now, we're going to talk about the Gaithersburg Book Festival in a little bit, so not that. What do you like best about being mayor?
Well, I think local government in general is a very, very gratifying experience, because you're making decisions that you see and are living with the results. And you know, in my particular makeup, I'm a service type person. I like to make people happy. I like to do good things. And as a small business owner in my day job, I'm very comfortable with accountability. Mayor is about as accountable a public role as you'll ever get, because you go anywhere, you're never off in a sense. You go to the grocery store, you're still the mayor. You go to the post office, you're still the mayor.
Trust me, I understand the concept.
Yes, you do. So I thrive in that environment. I love the accountability. I love doing good things for the community. So it's sort of a blanket general statement. It's just a really good fit for me.
So talk, if you would. So I always say that I love my children equally. Gaithersburg and Rockville, they're both such dynamic and successful cities and similar size, but the dynamics on the mayor and council are pretty different. On the mayor and council in Gaithersburg, you all tend to collaborate and cooperate, and there aren't factions and divisions. Why don't you talk about why you think that is? Because even with all the turnover over the years, and certainly people vote different ways, but tell me why do you think it works differently in Gaithersburg?
That's something I'm really, really proud of. And I'll just say it, I'll just put this out there. It's not something I started. I am the caretaker of a tradition that started before me. I learned the collaborative mayoral role from Sidney A. Katz, who you don't get a better collaborator than that. Right. We have this tradition. It is civil, friendly governance. It is disagreeing when we disagree without being disagreeable. It is collegiality. So there may be an issue that comes up on an agenda that's a 3-2 vote, and the next one might be 5-0. And we can have a night like that, and then the council members and I can go out for a beer afterwards.
I was just going to bring that up. I think going out for a beer makes a difference, actually.
Yeah, it's all part of team building. I think team building, personality are underrated traits in elected officials. You can find that you can elect the smartest guy in the room, but that's not going to necessarily be the most effective one.
I agree. Before we pivot to the next topic, I think it would be irresponsible for us not to talk about Gaithersburg extraordinary professional staff.
Well, I mean, they make us look great on a day-to-day basis. We are so lucky. It's not as lucky. And there's some skill that we have an involvement with in selecting city manager and city attorney. Those are the two positions that the mayor and council hire. Everyone else is hired, within staff. Yeah, they're amazing. They are professionals in each of the areas that and there's a lot of areas that you cover as a mayor and as a council member. There's a whole wide breadth of different topics that we have to cover. We rely on their expertise, professionalism, passion, dedication to our community all the time, and they basically never let us down. Yeah, agreed. And I can tell you from where I sit, I adore the senior leadership and everyone I ever cross paths with in Gaithersburg. They really are extraordinary. So yay team. So now we've got to pivot to the Gaithersburg Book Festival, because you can't talk to or about Jud Ashman without talking about the Gaithersburg Book Festival. So first off, start with, were you always, there we go. I don't have one. I have a t-shirt, I don't have a mug. I'll just stick with my Gaithersburg mug. So were you always a reader? Did you grow up from your childhood always loving to read? Yes, I was always a reader. For whatever reason, I was always really aware of the power of stories. So yes. Okay. And where did you come up with the idea of creating a book festival in Gaithersburg? Well, part of it comes from where I come from in Miami. Miami is the home of the Miami Book Fair International, and it is one of the top 2 or so largest book author events in the country. And that's been going on for like 30, close to 40 years. I came up here in the year 2000, or maybe it's 2001, Laura Bush, the former First Lady, and the late former Librarian of Congress, James Billington, founded the National Book Festival. And I started going to that from year one, where you just get some of the greatest authors on the planet to come speak about their work and sign books. And it's such a stimulating atmosphere and so much great discussion. And, you know, that went on for a few years until, and I was elected in 2007. In the year 2008, there was a national election. We knew the Bush administration was leaving. We didn't know what was coming in, or if they would continue the National Book Festival. And it occurred to me, if it's canceled, if this is terminated, what a tragedy this would be, but why can't we do one of our own? And the juices just started flowing. I mean, if you think about what books do, it's the most it's an empathic or empathetic, I don't know what the right word is, experience. It's the closest we can get to being in somebody else's head and seeing the world through somebody else's eyes. And that in its nature is an exercise that makes us better people, in my opinion.
That's great.
So
did you have a hard time being taken seriously when you took it to your council, when you took it to, to staff? Did people think it was a good idea, or did you have to really put?
I was blessed to have immediate support from the council members and from Sydney, our former mayor, and from our staff. I'm not 100% sure everyone grasped the scope of what I was talking about.
You didn't warn them, huh?
But this is kind of an example of my leadership style, in that I suggested that this is totally out of left field for a city to do, but I didn't want to just drop it, pitch the idea and just drop it in the lap of staff. Right. I also stayed on as the chair, sort of the operational chair of the book festival, which I still am today. Right. So I work shoulder to shoulder with our staff and with a wonderful volunteer committee trying to make this thing a success.
Definitely. So I have so many more questions about this. What gets you engaged in a book?
A great story or a great character. Something that's compelling, something that's different, something that's could be suspenseful. I mean, it could be just a beautiful rendering of a personality that I hadn't seen before. It could be any number of things, but I get drawn in. I fall in love with books.
That's great. So this is an impossible question. So I'm not going to ask you for your favorite authors, because I think we'd be here for 3 hours with you.
You would.
Everybody. But name an author or two that has not yet spoken, has not yet appeared before the Gaithersburg Book Festival, that's kind of on your fantasy bucket list.
Well, there are definitely quite a few. I mean, Stephen King would be a dream come true. I think he's an incredible storyteller. We get requests from kids all the time about Rick Riordan, who has a extremely popular children's series for many years. I read a book recently. My favorite book of 2020 was Homeland Elegies by Ayad Akhtar. And I would love to host that guy. I think that was a tremendous, it just depends. Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, who's got a great new book out called Project Hail Mary, sci-fi. There's a whole list.
Okay, all right. Talk about RAIN and the pandemic. They have been both, and both have created challenges. Yeah,
little did I know that RAIN would not be the biggest disruptor of the book festival, but the pandemic has taken over that slot. We've actually, so on a sunny day of late, when we have an in-person book festival, we've had 20,000 or more people come to see and meet these authors. When it rains, it definitely cuts into that. I think we had one where it rained all day and we estimated about 12,000 attendees. I'm not upset at all about 12,000 attendees. That's a fantastic turnout, particularly in the rain.
Yes.
Pandemic, yes, we had to pivot. We had to pivot to a virtual book festival. We put on some fabulous programs, all of which you can see on YouTube right now, anytime you like. But I'm really rearing to get back to in person.
Here's to next year, please. Yeah. So Mr. Mayor, other than the Gaithersburg Book Festival, what is your proudest accomplishment?
I would say it comes down to the fundamentals, because there's after 14 years of public service, being elected first time in '07, we've done some amazing things, environmental, arts and humanities, service in many, many different ways. But I think the thing that I say first is that we have delivered outstanding world-class level of services to our community at the lowest tax rate, lowest property tax rate of any of Maryland's large cities, and we are debt-free. Those things are remarkable. I find it, and it's the fundamentals, but I just feel like we've been kicking butt at the fundamentals for a while.
That's great. So I know that you go and speak in Gaithersburg schools, one of my favorite things to do. And I think it's also a young mayor each year. I wonder if you would speak about other things that you do to inspire young people to get into politics and policy, and some of our new Americans or new residents.
That's a great question. I am in the schools quite a bit, particularly when it's not a pandemic. I visit the elementary schools a lot, and then I'm at Gaithersburg High School in particular quite a bit at the different after-school programs, whether it's Brothers, whether it's Liberty's Promise, whether it's Identity. So I feel like that is playing a role. We do have a junior mayor program, which is fantastic, where we bring in a fourth grader each year. One fourth grader in the city becomes our junior mayor and appears with us at events and has, makes statements and that sort of thing. It's a great program. But in terms of inspiring, trying to get young members of our diverse community involved, I think it's mostly like visits to Liberty's Promise, or Liberty's Promise, for those who don't know, is a nonprofit organization that runs an after-school program for immigrants, recent immigrants. And the whole purpose of their gatherings is to talk about what life is like, and what the expectations of life are in the United States. It helps acclimate people, and I think it's a beautiful mission, and I've had some great conversations there.
So let's pivot to politics.
Okay.
This is an election year. You are on the ballot. You have an opponent, and there are also 2 open seats on the city council. Why don't you give a quick overview?
Yeah, so the way Gaithersburg works is we have our elections every 2 years, the on the off years. And they're staggered. So there are 6 elected officials, 3 up at a time in each of the years. So this year, my seat is up, and then there are 2 council seats up. This is unusual. The first time in 14 years, we've had 2 open seats on the city council, because my colleague and longtime friend, Mike Stesma, is retiring from local politics, and Lori Ann Sales is running for Montgomery County Council. So we have 5 people running for those 2 seats, and I think we have some excellent candidates, and I hope everyone will take a look.
Yes. And vote.
And vote. Yeah, and actually we have a hybrid election this time for the first time in Gaithersburg, where there's going to be a lot of mail-in voting. And I think the URL, if you want to request a mail-in ballot, is gaithersburgmd.gov/government/elections. And yeah, I have competition, so I hope you'll take a good look at both of us and then vote for me.
There you go. And just briefly, so in addition, so the hybrid, they can get their ballot in the mail, but there's also early voting, and there's in-person voting on election day. They can get all that information on gaithersburgmd.gov, correct?
That is correct. Thank you for bringing that up, because I just focused on the mail-in, but there is the in-person opportunities.
Totally that. And if you haven't yet registered, too late?
No, actually, you can. There is same-day registration.
Same day. Okay. Give us 1 or 2 of your goals if you are reelected.
Well, I think my top goal is fostering the redevelopment at Lake Forest Mall. That's the thing that's kept me up nights longest in my whole political career. I feel like we're getting closer and closer, but things that are beyond our control that need to happen in the private sector are what we're waiting for. And, to the degree we can facilitate it, we'll facilitate it.
Great. next year, 2022, just to be clear, no one from the mayor and council will be on the ballot for the mayor and council. But I'm just going to ask you officially here, Jud Ashman, any chance you run for anything else next year? County council, senator, delegate, county executive?
No chance, zero chance.
Okay. Talk about your personal business. You are a small business owner, and that has morphed a little bit in this internet era. Why don't you give us a little bit of a sense of Elegant Envelope and your web business and all that?
Yeah, well, actually, I closed it. So Elegant Envelope was the business that originally brought me up here. I closed it last year. It was after a long decline in the types of mailings that we were doing. It was a great business. I ran it for 20 plus years.
And to be clear, Elegant Envelope is what it, but people don't send envelopes so much anymore if they can do an email for free.
Yeah, what we did was, it was like personalized envelope addressing. It looked like it was done by hand or by a calligrapher, but it was really computerized. Now, what I've been doing since 2012 is I have a business called Web Mobile Image, where we specialize in designing, developing, and hosting and doing SEO for fantastic, beautiful websites.
SEO.
Yeah. Oh, search engine optimization. Yeah.
Acronyms. I always try
Yes,
to
good point.
Okay. And that's doing well.
Yes. Yeah, it's doing what we've done. We've done some great projects, some for organizations in the community. People watching this probably know Manna Food Center, Gaithersburg Help, and there are others.
That's great. 2 more questions before we go to our Fast Five. You went back to school. That is not something most folks do as grown-ups. Why don't you talk about what you wanted to learn, why, and are you happy you did it?
I'm so happy I did it. Yes, I sort of took advantage of the pandemic and lockdown to do something I've wanted to do for some time, which is go and get my master's degree. I'm working on an online master's degree from University of Maryland Global Campus. It is in accounting and financial management. And, if you'd asked me a year or two ago, like, do I know what's your experience with accounting? I'd say, oh yeah, I've done it. I've run a business for 20 years. But really, I hadn't done accounting in the traditional way. And I'm so glad what I had done really was bookkeeping. I'd done sort of intense bookkeeping, but not real accounting. And I'm so glad that I've done it. I'm sort of seeing things in a way that I hadn't seen them before. And I feel like I have an understanding of the financial world beyond what I had. And I had a pretty good working knowledge, but now it's better.
That's great. So before we go to the Fast Five, anything briefly that you want to say about Gaithersburg or about your leadership that we haven't covered yet?
Well, Gaithersburg is one of the most diverse cities in the United States of America. It is the #3 largest city population-wise in the state of Maryland. It is the heart of the I-270 biotech corridor. We have some amazing companies and commerce that's going on here. AstraZeneca has its North American campus here, and Novavax is building a big giant campus here, and Emergent Biosolutions is based. I can go on and on. There are great things happening in Gaithersburg on all fronts.
Amen. All of that. Yeah, we could have been here a long time. I definitely want to talk about that. We could talk about transportation, both the challenges and the assets, the new interchange at Watkins Mill, the
oh my God,
Corridor City Transitway, Bus Rapid Transit, the ICC, the Intercounty Connector. I mean, there are a million things, but
there's like hours of Kibbitzing that we could be doing.
Exactly. But Jud Ashman, Mayor of Gaithersburg, we are going to get to the Fast Five now. 5 questions to let people get to know you better. So first, you have a cat and a grand dog. Are you a cat person or a dog person? If you had to,
I have to choose one.
That's the rules.
I actually have 2 grand dogs, and 2 grand cats, and my own cat. So we raised animal lovers in this house. I love them all. It's a Sophie's choice.
Okay, that's fair. So you are widely known as an enormous, crazy fan of Hamilton, the Broadway musical. So we know that. Can you name a couple of other Broadway musicals that you like, maybe just almost as much?
Les Mis, West Side Story, love them. I can't, like, Hamilton sort of awakened an appreciation for musicals more than what I had. Hamilton was like a renaissance for that, for me, in that sense.
Nice.
So I've gotten more into it since then.
Awesome. So I don't know if you know this, but in college I had a radio show, Curtain Call with Cheryl Kagan, and I had Broadway musicals. So I'm a big fan.
And that's all you would play is selections from Broadway musicals?
Usually cover to cover and tell the story.
That's awesome.
It was really fun. So when the Fantastics, not the Broadway musical, but the ice cream and gelato place in downtown Crown opened, you went, you said you'd come back often, but you also wanted to stay on your diet. Have you been back much? And what is your favorite flavor of gelato or ice cream?
Oh, okay, this is a terrible answer because I've been good and stayed on my diet. I haven't, but I've gone back to admire because just looking in the display case is amazing. But no, I've been too good. I don't know if I should even apologize about it. I've lost some weight. The diet's working.
Good for you. All right. Well, I've been back. Just saying.
Well, what's your favorite flavor?
They have a hazelnut, sort of a Nutella thing. And so between Nutella and chocolate, and they have s'mores, and they have some really yummy flavors. So
awesome.
If you could live anywhere in the world except for Gaithersburg, where would you want to live?
That's a really tough question. I have tried Miami and I love visiting, but I wouldn't want to live there. My sister's in Nashville. I really like Nashville. So that's a consideration. My brother's in New York. I love visiting New York. I don't think I could live there. One of the favorite places, I love Sedona, Arizona. That's fantastic.
Lovely.
A few years ago, I went to Scotland and spent a week in Edinburgh during the Fringe Festival. And I thought, this is just heaven on earth. Between the arts, because that festival is immersive, everywhere you go is a venue, and the architecture and the people were great. Edinburgh would be a strong consideration.
All right, good answer. And question 5, Jud Ashman. The question I ask everybody at the end of my podcast: what is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent you have, something that most folks just can't do?
All right, I'm going to give you 2 answers. One is, this is the answer my kids would say, because you mentioned I have the grand dogs, and we do a lot of dog sitting here, and I'm always the one who ends up walking those dogs. And they always, we come back and they're like, how'd it go? And I happen to be very productive at it. So the kids, they have a nickname for me, the poop whisperer. So I don't know if everybody has that talent.
I have not seen you tweet that, Mr. Mayor.
Maybe not my proudest title, but it's there.
Okay.
A talent I have, I talked about facilitating. I think I am a really good facilitator. It's a natural thing for me, but I mentioned it before. I would say a lack of my inability to hold grudges is a superpower, because I don't carry around a lot of stuff with me. In some cases, I wish I held them a little better, and other people around me are like, you'd forgive that person for this. But all in all, I think it's a superpower not to be able to hold grudges.
I think that's beautiful, actually. So, Mayor Jud Ashman, thank you for all you do for the city of Gaithersburg, the residents of Gaithersburg, for being my partner, ally, and friend. And thank you for taking time to kibitz today.
Can I thank you for all you do for our community and for the wonderful way that you serve Gaithersburg and Rockville and your district, and the wonderful partnership you have with us. And I just want to say, for the record, when you were first running for senator, I was the first one. Of the
Yes, you were.
Gaithersburg elected, I was the first one, and it's a proud thing for me to be on the Cheryl train. So thank you.
I remember that. That was important, helpful, and yeah, gave me a lot of credibility and yeah.
I don't know if it got you 2 votes, but I'm proud to have done it.
I hope it got me 2. I hope you at the very least. Anyway, Judd, stay well. Good luck in your reelection. Anyone who's watching, make sure you vote. Make sure you support Jud Ashman for reelection for all he has done for Gaithersburg and all he will do. Judd, stay safe and well. See you again soon.
Thank you. See ya.